The planet Vareth Prime was old, so old that even the stars around it seemed tired. At the center of the Galactic Coalition's oldest research station stood something older still. A giant machine, a titan of metal and mystery. The aliens called it the Sentinel of Dawn, and it had not moved for exactly 1,358 years. The machine was massive. It stood over 60 meters tall, shaped like a warrior from ancient legends. Its body was made of a metal that no one could identify. Its eyes were dark and empty. Its arms hung at its sides like it was sleeping while standing up. Every day, researchers walked past it. Every day, they looked up at its face and wondered what secrets it held. For centuries, the smartest engineers from across the galaxy had tried to wake it up. The Valori came first. They were tall beings with silver skin and minds that could process 1,000 calculations in a single second. They scanned the Sentinel with every tool they had. They found nothing useful. The Keth came next. They were insect-like creatures who could feel magnetic fields and electrical currents with their antennae. Even they could not find a way inside. The Marath, an ancient race who claimed to be cousins of the civilization that built the Sentinel, spent 50 years studying it. They also failed. Everyone agreed on one thing. The machine was not dead. Deep inside its chest, something still hummed. A faint heartbeat of energy that proved it was alive. But it would not respond. It would not move. It simply stood there year after year, century after century, like a soldier waiting for orders that would never come. The station built around it grew larger over time. Scientists came and went. Theories were written and forgotten. The Sentinel became a tourist attraction for some and a frustrating puzzle for others. Most people stopped believing it would ever wake up. This was the world that Kang Ti-Wu arrived in on a cold morning in the station's artificial winter cycle. Ti-Wu was 28 years old. He was not tall. He was not particularly strong. He had messy black hair that he never bothered to comb properly and hands that were always stained with engine grease. He came from Earth, from a place called Busan Orbital Shipyard, where humans built and repaired starships for the smaller trade companies that could not afford fancy alien technology. He was not supposed to be on Varath Prime. His transport ship had suffered engine failure 2 days ago, and the station was the closest place to land. While waiting for repairs, the station commander offered him temporary work. Their human-made generators were old and breaking down, and none of the alien engineers wanted to touch such primitive machines. Ti-Wu needed the money, so he said yes. Nobody paid much attention to him when he arrived. Humans were still newcomers to the galactic community. They had only been part of the coalition for about 200 years. Most alien species saw them as children playing in a universe built by adults. They were short-lived, fragile, and had no special abilities. No psychic powers, no natural armor, no ability to breathe in space or survive extreme temperatures, just soft skin and stubborn attitudes. Ti-Wu did not mind being ignored. He was used to it. He carried his grandmother's old toolkit in a worn leather bag and found his way to the generator room without asking for directions. The work was simple enough. Replace some worn parts, clean the filters, adjust the power flow. He finished in half the time the station expected. With nothing else to do, he decided to explore. The station was impressive. Long corridors made of polished stone and glowing panels. Windows that looked out into the purple sky of Varath Prime. Gardens filled with plants from 100 different worlds, but none of it caught his attention like the central chamber did. He walked through a large archway and stopped. There it was, the Sentinel of Dawn. Ti-Wu had heard stories about ancient machines before. Earth had its own legends of sleeping giants and forgotten gods, but this was different. This was real. The Titan stood before him like a mountain made of metal, its shadow covering the entire floor of the chamber. Ti-Wu felt very small. He felt like an ant looking up at a building. But he also felt something else, something strange, a pull, like the machine was calling to him without making a sound. He stood there for a long time just looking. Other workers walked past him and laughed quietly. A group of Velori engineers shook their heads. "Humans," one of them muttered. "They always stare at things they cannot understand, like animals looking at fire." Tiwu heard them but did not respond. He was too busy studying the sentinel's face. The empty eyes, the closed mouth, the way its hands were slightly open, as if it had been reaching for something before it stopped moving. An old Keth scientist shuffled over to him. Its many legs clicked against the floor. "You are new here," it said. Its voice was like dry leaves rubbing together. "Yes," Tiwu replied. "I am just a mechanic fixing the generators." "Ah, human machines." The Keth made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Simple things, not like this one. This one is beyond all of us." "What happened to it?" Tiwu asked. "Why did it stop?" The Keth was quiet for a moment. "No one knows. The Oran built it long ago. The Oran are gone now, dead for thousands of years. They left this behind, but they did not leave instructions. We have tried everything. Nothing works." Tiwu nodded slowly. He reached out and touched the base of the sentinel's foot. The metal was cold but not lifeless. He could almost feel a vibration beneath the surface, like a heartbeat, like breathing. "Maybe you are just tired," he said softly, not really expecting anyone to hear. The Keth stared at him with its many eyes. "You talk to machines." Tiwu shrugged. "My grandmother did. She said machines have memories. They remember the people who built them and the people who cared for them. She talked to every ship she ever fixed." "Your grandmother sounds unusual." "She was," Tiwu smiled sadly. "She was the best mechanic I ever knew." He looked up at the sentinel one more time before walking away. The Keth watched him go, its antennae twitching with something that might have been curiosity. That night, Tiwu lay in his small room and thought about the giant machine. He could not explain why it fascinated him so much. He was nobody important, just a simple mechanic from a simple world. He had no business thinking about ancient alien technology. But he could not stop thinking about it. He closed his eyes and remembered his grandmother's words. She used to say that the most important tool was not a wrench or a scanner. It was patience. It was listening. It was treating every machine like it had a soul. "Maybe," Tiwu whispered to himself in the darkness, "maybe everyone has been trying too hard. Maybe they forgot to just listen." It was a foolish thought. He knew that. But he could not shake the feeling that something was waiting for him in that chamber, something old and lonely, something that had been waiting for a very long time. Outside his window, the stars of Vareth Prime shone cold and distant, and deep within the Sentinel of Dawn, in a place no scanner had ever reached, something stirred. It was small. It was weak. But for the first time in over 1,000 years, it was not completely asleep. 3 days passed, and Tiwu could not forget about the Sentinel. He finished his work on the generators quickly each day, then spent his free time in the station's library. The library was a massive room filled with floating screens and holographic displays. Information from 1,000 worlds was stored there, waiting to be read. Tiwu searched for everything he could find about the Sentinel of Dawn. There were thousands of files, research papers, scan results, failed experiments. He read them all one by one until his eyes burned and his head hurt. The files told the same story over and over. The Velori had tried quantum scanning. The Keth had tried magnetic resonance. The Moreth had tried ancient rituals that involved strange lights and sounds. Everyone had different methods, but everyone had the same result. Nothing worked. Tiwu noticed something strange as he read. Every single report focused on the same question. What is the Sentinel made of? What technology does it use? How does its power core function? They asked what the machine was. They measured its parts. They analyzed its energy. But no one asked why. Why did the Sentinel stop moving? Why did it shut itself down? What was it waiting for? Tiwu leaned back in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes. It seemed like such an obvious question. If his grandmother's old ship suddenly stopped working, he would not just scan the engine. He would ask what happened. He would look for the cause, not just the symptoms. Maybe the alien scientists thought the question was too simple. Maybe they believed that understanding the technology would automatically explain everything else. But Ti-Wu was not a scientist. He was a mechanic. And mechanics knew that sometimes the problem was not in the machine itself. Sometimes the problem was in the reason the machine was built. The next morning, he went looking for answers in a different place. He found the office of Dr. Park Soo-min on the third level of the research wing. She was a xenoarchaeologist, which meant she studied ancient alien civilizations. More importantly, she was human. She was Korean like him, and she had been studying the Orun for 3 years. Soo-min was a small woman in her mid-30s with short hair and glasses that she constantly pushed up her nose. Her office was a mess of papers, artifacts, and half-eaten snacks. When Ti-Wu knocked on her door, she looked up with surprise. "A visitor? That is rare." She gestured for him to come in. "You are the mechanic, yes. The one who fixed our generators so fast that the Velori thought you cheated." Ti-Wu smiled. "I did not cheat. Their engineers just did not want to get their hands dirty." Soo-min laughed. "I like you already. Sit down. What brings you here?" Ti-Wu sat in the only chair that was not covered with books. He told her about his interest in the Sentinel. He told her about the files he had read and the question no one seemed to ask. Soo-min listened carefully, her eyes growing more interested with each word. "You are right," she said when he finished. "No one asks why. They treat the Sentinel like a puzzle to be solved, not a being to be understood." "A being?" Ti-Wu raised an eyebrow. Soo-min stood up and walked to a cluttered shelf. She pulled out a small stone tablet covered with strange symbols. The Orun were not like other ancient civilizations. They did not build cold machines. Their technology was alive. It responded to emotions, to intentions, to the hearts of those who used it. She handed him the tablet. Ti-Wu could not read the symbols, but he could feel something when he touched it, a warmth, a faint pulse. "This is a translation I have been working on," Soo-min continued, pulling up a holographic display. "It is from an Orun temple on a dead moon. It talks about the Guardians. That is what they called machines like the Sentinel." She read aloud from the display. "The Guardians do not serve those who command. They bond with those who understand. They are not weapons to be used. They are companions to be cherished." Ti-Wu felt a chill run down his spine. Companions, not tools. "Exactly." Soo-min's eyes were bright with excitement. "The Coalition has spent centuries trying to control the Sentinel, trying to give it orders, trying to force it to respond. But according to Orun beliefs, that approach would never work. The Guardians choose their partners. They cannot be commanded." "Then how do you get them to choose you?" Soo-min shrugged. "That is the mystery. The Orun are gone. Their full knowledge died with them. All we have are fragments, hints, pieces of a larger picture." Ti-Wu thought about this for a long moment. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory. "Machines remember the people who cared for them. Machines have souls." Maybe it was not so different after all. That night, Ti-Wu did something foolish. He waited until the station was quiet, until most workers were asleep or busy with night shifts. Then he made his way to the central chamber where the Sentinel stood. Security was minimal. After more than 1,000 years of nothing happening, the guards had become lazy. They barely glanced at Ti-Wu as he walked past. He was just a mechanic. What harm could he do? The chamber was dark except for the soft glow of emergency lights. The Sentinel looked even more impressive at night, its shadow stretching across the floor like a sleeping giant. Ti-Wu walked slowly toward it, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He stopped at the base of its foot. The metal was cold under his palm just like before, but now he knew more. Now he understood. "Hey," he said softly. His voice sounded strange in the empty chamber. I do not know if you can hear me. The scientists say you are just a machine. They say you do not think or feel, but I am not sure I believe them." He paused, feeling foolish, talking to a statue. What was he doing? But something made him continue. "I read about the Oran today, about how they built their guardians. They say you were meant to be companions, not weapons, not tools, friends." He laughed quietly. "That must have been nice, having someone who cared about you, not just what you could do for them." The chamber remained silent. The sentinel did not move. "I know what it is like to be ignored," Ti-Wu continued. "Humans are new to the galaxy. Most aliens think we are stupid, primitive. They look at us like we are insects. Sometimes I feel invisible, like I do not matter at all." He pressed his palm harder against the cold metal. "Maybe you feel that way too. Maybe that is why you stopped. Maybe you got tired of being used, tired of being alone." Still nothing, just silence and shadows. Ti-Wu sighed. "Anyway, I just wanted to say, I am sorry. I am sorry that no one has talked to you properly in all this time. I am sorry they only saw you as a thing to be studied. You deserve better than that." He turned to leave, feeling embarrassed. This was stupid. It was just a machine, just metal and circuits and ancient technology. But as he walked away, something happened. Deep within the Sentinel, in a place no scanner had ever reached, a tiny light flickered. It was small. It was weak. It lasted only a fraction of a second. But it was the first response in over 1,300 years. And though Ti-Wu did not see it, though he walked back to his room thinking he had wasted his time, the universe had just shifted ever so slightly. Something ancient had heard him. Something ancient had listened. And something ancient was starting to remember what it felt like to not be alone. Word spread quickly on a small station. By the next afternoon, everyone knew about the human mechanic who talked to the Sentinel. The alien engineers found it hilarious. They gathered in the cafeteria and laughed about it over their meals. "Did you hear? The human thinks he can wake the Guardian by having a conversation with it. Maybe he should try singing to it next, or dancing. Humans are so primitive. They think everything has feelings, even rocks, even machines." Ti-Wu heard the laughter. He saw the mocking looks. He pretended not to notice, but it hurt. It always hurt to be treated like a fool. Commander Rothek called him to his office that same day. Rothek was a Velori, tall and silver-skinned with eyes that looked like chips of ice. He sat behind a large desk made of polished alien wood and stared at Ti-Wu with open contempt. "I have received reports," Rothek said coldly, "that you have been visiting the Guardian Chamber without authorization, that you have been speaking to the Sentinel. Is this true?" Ti-Wu nodded. "Yes, Commander." "Why?" "I was curious. I thought maybe." "You thought what?" Rothek cut him off. "That you, a simple human mechanic with no scientific training, could succeed where the greatest minds of the galaxy have failed. That your primitive superstitions would accomplish what our technology could not." Ti-Wu did not answer. There was nothing he could say. Rothek leaned forward. "You are here to fix generators, nothing more. You will stay away from the Guardian Chamber. You will stop this foolishness immediately. If I hear of any more unauthorized visits, you will be removed from this station. Is that clear?" "Yes, Commander." "Good, you are dismissed." Ti-Wu left the office with his head down. The corridor outside was empty, but he could feel the weight of judgment pressing on him from all directions. He was just a mechanic, just a human. Who was he to think he could make a difference? He found Su-Min waiting for him near the garden level. She had heard about the meeting with Rothek and looked worried. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I have been ordered to stay away from the Sentinel." Su-Min frowned. "That is unfair. You were not hurting anything." "It does not matter. Rothek thinks I am a joke. Everyone thinks I am a joke." "I do not think that." Su-Min grabbed his arm and pulled him into a quiet corner. "Listen to me, Ti-Wu. I found something important, another Oran text. It took me all night to translate it, but I think it explains everything." She pulled out her portable display and showed him a new passage. "The guardian sleeps when its bond is broken. It waits in darkness for one who carries light, not the light of power or knowledge, the light of a caring heart." Tiwu read the words slowly. "A caring heart. Do you understand? The Oran did not choose their guardians based on intelligence or strength. They chose them based on compassion, on genuine care." Sumin's eyes were intense. "You spoke to the sentinel like it was a friend, like it was a person. That is exactly what the Oran intended." But nothing happened. It did not respond. "Are you sure?" Sumin smiled mysteriously. "I checked the station's energy monitors this morning. Last night, at exactly the time you were in the chamber, there was a tiny spike in the Sentinel's power readings. It only lasted a fraction of a second, but it was there. The first change in over 1,000 years." Tiwu felt his heart skip a beat. "Really? Really? Whatever you did, it worked. Just a little, but it worked." He stood there in silence, processing this information. The mockery of the aliens, the anger of Commander Rothek. None of it mattered if what Su Min said was true. He had done something no one else could do. But could he do more? That night Ti-Wu made his decision. He would go back. He would try again. If Rothek caught him, he would be kicked off the station. But some things were worth the risk. He stopped at his room first and grabbed something special from his bag. A bottle of soju, traditional Korean rice wine. He had been saving it for a special occasion. His grandmother had given it to him before she died. "Share this with someone important," she had said. "Never drink alone." He also grabbed 2 small cups from the station's cafeteria. Then he made his way to the guardian chamber, moving carefully through the shadows to avoid the security guards. The chamber was quiet and dark, just like before. The sentinel stood motionless, a mountain of metal and mystery. Ti-Wu walked up to its base and sat down on the cold floor. He placed the 2 cups in front of him and opened the bottle. "I brought something," he said out loud. "I hope you do not mind. My grandmother always said you should never drink alone. It is bad luck, and it is lonely." He poured soju into both cups, one for himself, one placed carefully at the base of the sentinel's foot. "This was hers," he continued. "She gave it to me before she passed away, told me to share it with someone important." He laughed softly. "I do not know if you count as someone, but you are important. At least I think you are." He picked up his cup and raised it toward the silent giant. "To you, to whoever you were before, to whoever you might become." He drank. The soju burned his throat in a familiar, comforting way. Then he started talking, really talking. He told the sentinel about his grandmother, about how she had spent 40 years fixing starships in the Busan orbital shipyard, about how she had taught him that machines were not just metal and circuits. They carried memories. They held pieces of the souls of everyone who had ever touched them. She used to sing to the engines, Ti-Wu said, smiling at the memory. Old Korean songs. The other mechanics thought she was crazy, but her ships always ran better than anyone else's. They flew smoother. They lasted longer. I think they loved her. He told the sentinel about Earth, about the blue oceans and green mountains, about the cities that floated in the sky and the colonies that spread across the solar system. He talked about how humans were seen as primitive by the rest of the galaxy, how they had no psychic powers, no special abilities, just stubborn hearts that refused to give up. "We came from nothing," he said. "Just one small planet in a galaxy full of ancient civilizations. Everyone expected us to fail, to disappear, but we are still here, still fighting, still trying." He poured himself another cup and drank it slowly. "I know what it is like to feel useless," he admitted. "To feel like no one cares. After my grandmother died, I felt so lost. She was the only family I had, the only person who believed in me. Without her, I was just nothing, a nobody." His voice cracked slightly. He had not talked about this in a long time. But she taught me something important. She said that caring about things is not weakness, it is strength. She said that the universe is cold and dark, and the only warmth we can find is the warmth we create ourselves, through kindness, through connection, through love. He looked up at the Sentinel's face. The eyes were still dark, the mouth was still closed, but somehow it felt different now, less like a statue, more like someone listening. I do not know if I can help you, Ti-Wu said honestly. I do not know if any of this matters, but I want you to know that I am here, and I will keep coming back, as many times as it takes, because no one deserves to be alone for 1,000 years. No one. He finished his drink and sat in silence for a long moment. And then the ground trembled. It was subtle at first, just a slight vibration, but it grew stronger. The walls of the chamber shook, dust fell from the ceiling. Ti-Wu scrambled to his feet and looked up. The Sentinel's eyes were glowing. 2 points of golden light in the darkness, brighter than any sun, warmer than any fire. It was awake. Alarms screamed through the station. Red lights flashed in every corridor. Voices shouted in a dozen alien languages. Panic spread like fire. The Sentinel was moving. After 1,358 years of silence, the ancient guardian was finally awake. Its eyes blazed with golden light. Its joints groaned as centuries of stillness ended. The sound was like thunder rolling through mountains. Ti-Wu stood frozen at its feet, still holding his empty soju cup. His heart pounded in his chest. He could not believe what he was seeing. The massive head was turning. The enormous hands were flexing. Cracks of light appeared along the seams of its armor as power flowed through systems that had been dormant for longer than human civilization had existed among the stars. Station security rushed into the chamber, weapons raised. Commander Rothek was right behind them, his silver face twisted with fear and fury. "What have you done?" Rothek shouted at Ti-Wu. "What did you do to it?" Before Ti-Wu could answer, the Sentinel moved again. It did not attack. It did not charge forward or raise its weapons. Instead, it did something no one expected. It kneeled. The motion was slow and careful, like an old giant remembering how to move. The ground shook as its massive knee touched the floor. Its head lowered until one glowing eye was level with Ti-Wu. The eye was bigger than his entire body, burning with warm, golden light. Everyone in the chamber fell silent. Even Rothek stopped shouting. They all stared at the impossible sight before them, the most powerful weapon in the galaxy, kneeling before a simple human mechanic. Then the Sentinel spoke. The voice did not come from its mouth. It resonated directly in Ti-Wu's mind, warm and deep like the rumbling of distant oceans. "You are small." Ti-Wu swallowed hard. "Yes, I am. Fragile, your lifespan is a breath against the endless cosmos. You carry no weapons. You possess no great power." "That is also true. And yet you came to me, not to command, not to study, not to take what you could use and discard the rest." The golden eye seemed to burn even brighter. "You came to sit with me, to share your drink, to speak to me as a friend speaks to a friend." Ti-Wu felt tears forming in his eyes. He did not know why. "I just thought you might be lonely. 1,300 years is a long time to be alone." The Sentinel was quiet for a moment. When it spoke again, its voice was softer. "The others came with demands. Scan us, they ordered. Serve us, they commanded. Fight for us, they begged. They saw only my power, only what I could do for them. They never asked what I wanted. They never cared about who I was." The massive head tilted slightly, a gesture that seemed almost curious. "But you cared. You brought offerings. You shared your grief. You spoke to me of your grandmother who treated machines with love. You showed me that even in this cold universe there are still hearts that burn with warmth." Ti-Wu wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "I did not know it would work. I just wanted to try." "That is why it worked." The sentinel raised one enormous finger and gently touched Tiwu's shoulder. The metal was warm now, not cold. It felt like a comforting hand. I am called Murren in the old tongue. It means one who remembers. And I remember now what I had forgotten. I remember why I was built. Not to destroy, not to conquer, to protect, to companion, to never let those I love stand alone. Commander Rothek finally found his voice. This is impossible. The human has no psychic abilities, no connection to the Auron. He is just a mechanic. Murren turned its massive head toward the Velori commander. When it spoke, its voice was thunder. You measured power in machines and calculations. You measured worth in technology and years. You forgot that the Auron built with their hearts, not their minds. This human carries more of their spirit than all your scientists combined. Rothek stumbled backward, his silver face pale with shock. Su-min pushed through the crowd of guards and ran to Tiwu's side. Her eyes were streaming with tears, but she was smiling. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." "I do not understand how," Tiwu admitted. "I do," Su-min laughed through her tears. The Auron did not care about intelligence or power. They cared about compassion, about genuine connection. You gave Murren what no one else ever offered. You gave her kindness. Her. Murren's voice rumbled with what might have been amusement. "The Auron did not see gender as you do, but I am pleased with the designation. Yes, I am Murren and I am awake." The Guardian rose to her full height, 60 meters of ancient power, lit from within by golden fire. The station trembled with each movement. Outside the chamber, aliens and humans alike watched through windows and screens, their faces frozen with awe. "What do you want?" Rothek demanded, his voice shaking. "What are your intentions?" Murren looked down at him with eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. "I want what I have always wanted, a companion, a friend, someone who will stand beside me not because they must, but because they choose to." She turned back to Tiwu. "I have been alone for 1,358 years. I have waited in darkness while empires crumbled and stars died. I waited because I knew that someday someone would come, someone who would see me not as a weapon but as a soul." Tiwu looked up at the ancient guardian. He was just a mechanic from a small shipyard. He had no special powers, no great destiny, but here he stood, chosen by something older than most of the galaxy. "I am not sure I am worthy of this," he said honestly. "Worthiness is not measured by power or status. It is measured by the kindness of your heart. And your heart, Kang Tiwu, burns brighter than any star I have ever seen." Murren extended her massive hand, palm up, an invitation. Tiwu looked at Su-min. She nodded, smiling through her tears. He looked at Commander Rothek and the alien guards. Their faces were a mixture of fear, confusion, and reluctant respect. He looked up at Murren, at the golden eyes that held the wisdom of ages, at the ancient metal that hummed with patient power. Then he stepped onto her palm. "I guess we are partners now," he said quietly. "We are more than partners," Murren replied, lifting him gently toward her shoulder. "We are family, and family never stands alone." The station fell silent as the ancient guardian rose with her new companion. For the first time in over a millennium, Murren felt something she had nearly forgotten. She felt happy. She felt complete. She felt alive. And somewhere in the vastness of space, word began to spread. The humans had done something impossible. A simple mechanic had awakened an ancient god, not with technology, not with power, but with something the galaxy had long dismissed as weakness. With love. The Galactic Coalition was in chaos. Emergency meetings were called on a dozen worlds. Admirals and generals argued. Politicians shouted. Scientists scrambled to understand what had happened. An ancient superweapon had awakened. A machine capable of destroying entire fleets had risen from its long sleep, and it had bonded with a human, not a warrior, not a genius, not a leader, a mechanic, a nobody. Some demanded that Murren be deactivated immediately. She was too dangerous, they said, too unpredictable. The Valori claimed that humans were too primitive to control such power. The bonding must be a mistake, a glitch in ancient programming that could be fixed. Others wanted to study the Guardian. They wanted to take her apart, to learn her secrets, to copy her technology for themselves. But Murren spoke only to Tiwu, and Tiwu had no interest in politics or power. The Coalition Council summoned him 3 days after the awakening. He stood in a massive chamber surrounded by representatives from 100 species. Holographic screens floated around him, displaying the faces of leaders watching from across the galaxy. Commander Rothek stood in the corner, his silver face still pale with shock. "Kang Tiwu of Earth," the head counselor began, "you have done something unprecedented. The Guardian of Dawn has chosen you as her companion. This gives you significant power. What do you intend to do with it?" Tiwu looked around at the assembled leaders. They stared at him with curiosity, fear, and barely hidden greed. They saw him as a tool, a key to unlock the weapon they had desired for centuries. He thought about his grandmother, about her kind eyes and calloused hands, about the way she treated every machine with respect and love. "I am not a soldier," he said quietly. "I do not want to fight. I do not want to conquer. I am just a mechanic. I fix things. That is all I have ever done." The counselors murmured among themselves. This was not the answer they expected. "But you command the most powerful weapon in the galaxy," a Velori representative protested. "You could lead armies. You could destroy enemies. You could reshape the balance of power." "No," Tiwu shook his head. "Murren is not a weapon, she never was. The Oran did not build her to destroy. They built her to protect, to help, to companion." He looked at the floating holographic screen that showed Murren standing outside the station, her golden eyes looking toward the stars. "Murren chose me because I did not want to use her, because I saw her as a friend, not a tool. If you try to force her into service, if you try to turn her into a weapon, you will fail. Just like you failed for 1,300 years." The chamber fell silent. No one knew how to respond. Then Murren's voice resonated through the room. The counselors jumped in their seats. They had not expected the Guardian to speak directly. "The small one speaks truth. I was built for protection, not destruction. For companionship, not servitude. I will not serve your wars. I will not fight your battles. But I will help those who are in need. I will protect those who cannot protect themselves. And I will do so with my companion at my side." "What does that mean?" the head counselor asked nervously. "It means," Tiwu said, "that we are going to fix things together." Over the following weeks, the galaxy learned what this meant. Reports came in from distant colonies and struggling outposts. A massive Guardian had appeared, accompanied by a small human. They repaired failing life support systems. They defended civilian ships from pirates. They carried supplies to isolated worlds cut off by cosmic storms. They asked for nothing in return. They stayed only long enough to help, then moved on to the next crisis. Su Min watched the reports from her office on Vereth Prime. She published her findings about the Oran and their philosophy of technology. For the first time, the galaxy began to understand what the ancient civilization had truly believed. The Oran did not see machines as tools. They saw them as partners, as family. They built with love and expected love in return. Their guardians were not weapons of war but guardians of peace, companions who would stand beside their chosen partners through any hardship. The Coalition scientists had spent centuries trying to dominate the technology. They had failed because they never understood its heart. A human had succeeded because he understood perfectly. Word spread across the stars. Stories of the Korean mechanic and his ancient friend became legends. Songs were written about them. Children played games pretending to be Tiwu and Murren. But the truth was simpler than any legend. They were just two lonely souls who had found each other in the darkness. 1 year after the awakening, Ti-Woo sat on Murren's shoulder as they drifted through space. A distress call had led them to a remote asteroid colony where the water purification system had failed. They had fixed it in 3 hours. The colonists had cried with gratitude. Now they were floating among the stars, resting before the next mission. Murren, Ti-Woo said, "Can I ask you something?" "You may ask me anything." "In 1300 years, did you ever dream?" The Guardian was quiet for a moment. "I am not certain if what I experienced could be called dreams, but I saw things, memories, faces of those I had once protected, voices of those I had once loved." "That sounds lonely." "It was. For a long time I wished for oblivion, for true sleep without memories, but then," her voice softened, "then I heard something new, a small voice in the darkness, a voice full of kindness and pain, a voice that spoke to me not as a master to a servant but as a friend to a friend." Ti-Woo smiled. "My grandmother would have liked you." "Tell me of her," Murren replied. "I wish to know everything." And so, as stars wheeled past them in the endless night, Ti-Woo talked about his grandmother. He told stories of her laughter and her wisdom, of the songs she sang to the engines, of the way she could fix any machine with patience and love. Murren listened to every word. She memorized every detail. And though she was a being of ancient metal and cosmic power, she felt something she had not felt in over a millennium. She felt at home. Back on Earth, in the Busan orbital shipyard, the workers gathered to watch the news. A young mechanic had become a galactic legend. Their own kind had done what the greatest minds of the universe could not. An old foreman raised his glass. "To Ti-Woo," he said, "the kid who talked to machines." And to his grandmother, another worker added, "who taught him how." They drank together, smiling at the stars beyond their windows. Far away, drifting through the cosmos, Murren and Ti-Woo continued their journey. They had no destination, no mission except to help where help was needed. Two unlikely companions, bound not by power or obligation, but by something far stronger. By kindness, by understanding, by love. The galaxy had measured worth in strength and technology and years of civilization. They had looked at humans and seen only fragile, short-lived creatures with no special abilities. They had forgotten that the universe is cold and dark. They had forgotten that the only warmth comes from the hearts of those who care. And one human mechanic, with nothing but an old toolkit and his grandmother's wisdom, had reminded them. Sometimes the smallest souls carry the brightest light. Sometimes the ones everyone overlooks are the ones who change everything. And sometimes, all it takes to wake a sleeping god is someone willing to sit with them and say, "You are not alone." Ti-Woo looked out at the stars spreading before them. Murren's warmth surrounded him like a protective embrace. He thought about all the places they would go, all the people they would help, all the lives they would touch. He smiled and reached for the small bottle of soju he always carried. "Hey Murren," he said, "want to share a drink?" The ancient guardian's laughter echoed through the void. "I would like that very much." And somewhere in the infinite darkness, two stars seemed to shine a little brighter. Two souls who had been lost had finally found each other. The mechanic and the guardian. Human and machine. Family. Forever.